we've seen shady stuff from both parties, especially at the national level, for years. I mean, this has never been
Politics is politics, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, we've also suspected politicians of crimes and all sorts of stuff, but it's on a whole nother level now, a whole nother level. And for people that are watching this to think that this doesn't happen in Montana, because I mean, that's what a lot of people believe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just DC stuff.
No,
That's just DC politics. And wow. So yeah, I appreciate you talking about that and sharing that, because I think I just want people to understand that this type of behavior is real.
It's happening here.
It's real.
Yep.
It's here. It's,
and I kind of wear it as a badge of honor, honestly. Like I figure if you're not over the target if you're not taking flack.
6 to 9 foot pursuit. Stop! Stop!
Good afternoon, Austin. How are you?
I'm great, Jesse. Or Sheriff. I'm not sure what we're doing here, but yeah.
We're just relaxing. Two guys talking.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for making the trip up here. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Glad we could finally make it work.
I know. I'm excited to have you. Hey, real quick, people get a gift on here. So Pursuit Podcast sweet. Challenge coin for you. So ACBC out of Utah makes those. Do you know Luann?
I do.
She's awesome.
I do.
She makes those. Yeah, she makes those for the show. So that one's yours. Is only guests on the show get those. So
I'm pretty sure I met her at SHOT Show, actually.
Yeah. She's a great lady. She does a great job. At the sheriff's office, she does all of our badges and coins and everything, and just a huge law enforcement supporter. So just awesome lady.
Well, I appreciate it. I did not do challenge coins from my office. We did patches instead, like Velcro PVC patches, and of course I forgot to bring you one, but I will fix that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. I'm obviously very familiar with your organization, so we work together.
We do
on a daily basis, so that helps a lot. And I was really excited to have you on the show. And I'll tell you a couple things. Is so if you don't know, this is a fundraiser for our foundation. So we have a thing called the Sheriff's Legacy Foundation, and it's a nonprofit 501(c) that basically supplements our budget for things like this. Last year, they helped us buy breaching tools, RTS shields for school safety.
Sure.
Different. They bought all of our like scorpions and our bulletproof backpacks for our school safety program. So they're canines, you name it.
Yeah.
Like when the budget can't afford things, we go to them, give them a proposal. And then we were trying to figure out different ways we could fundraise. So this came to an idea is that we could put out public information that people would want to know about. And then at the same time, the advertisements. So you're holding a cup that has advertising on it right there. There you go.
Like that.
Those advertisers pay, and then that money goes directly to the foundation.
Got it.
So that's kind of how the whole Pursuit podcast exists.
Okay.
And it's all to go right back to the community to help support our community and make it safer.
Excellent.
So yeah, so that's the real exciting part about what we do and what we believe in. And so we've had tons of different guests on here. I think last week might not be last week as the show is air, but we had Dan Wilson, Judge Dan Wilson on. Yeah, he did a great job. Very
great
good
guy.
Job. Yeah, he is a good guy. I didn't know much about him before he came on. I mean, it seems like Flathead County and here are a world away, even though we're not that far apart.
Yeah.
And so it was really good to sit down, and it was a great conversation.
And I mean, I haven't gotten to know him except in the last year, just happened to be at campaign events overlapping and talking with him and kind of learning who he is and listening to him give speeches. And, but I mean, he's an impressive judge.
He did a really good job with answering some of my harder questions where I questioned the supremacy clause and I questioned some things. And he did a really good job, though. I've had some other lawyers and judges stumble over those questions a lot, and he didn't stumble.
He's a sharp guy.
He did a really nice job. And he, just in true judge fashion, there are certain things he wouldn't commit to. But one of the things I liked is he did it in a way that wasn't like, I'm not answering that. That question's beneath me. I mean, he didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
He doesn't hide behind it.
No.
Which you certainly see in a lot of your judicial candidates sometimes.
Absolutely.
They'll hide behind, I can't possibly talk about that because I don't want to is really the answer. But
yeah, exactly. And Corey Swanson, I had him on too. He was very much the same.
Yeah.
Corey was a little interesting because he was Dan was a little bit more business. Corey was very much more personal.
Interesting.
Which I thought was super interesting.
I've known Corey longer. I'm more familiar and friendly with. Of course, we were both county attorneys. We were in the County Attorneys Association together. But I knew him before that. He worked for Attorney General Fox, and then prior to that, he was around the Montana legislature.
And I just heard something. I mean, as we're sitting here talking, I forget that you're actually running right now for re-election, aren't you? And I'll tell you why.
I kind of like that people forget about that.
Well, I'll tell you why. I can't tell you who you're running against.
That's perfect.
And if you're smart, you're not going to say.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
No, but I mean, seriously, like, I don't know.
And I hear that a lot. I mean, honestly, I that's a very common sentiment when I'm traveling around. People are like, you're up right now? Like, who are you running against? Like, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you.
No, you don't ever do that. Ever. It's always, I always defaulted to, my opponent.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I mean, I actually do usually tell people, but I'm not going to on here.
No, you shouldn't. that is poor taste. No, I literally, I knew, and I was half kidding. I knew you were up for election, but I forget. Like, and I think that's probably a testament to how good of a job you've done with not only doing the work, but also your branding and your name recognition and everything that you work so hard on.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I don't think it's that necessary. There's a lot going on. I mean, the tester race, the tester Sheehy race is just sucking up all the oxygen in the state. You know, you've got all the DNC stuff and the presidential, and you get down to a little down ticket state race like the Attorney General, and we fly a little more under the radar.
In my world, the Attorney General race is the race.
I mean, once you talk to people about what the Attorney General actually does, I mean, it's actually a quite important position, and we do a lot of stuff. I mean, it kind of depends state to state, but I mean, it's a pretty important position.
No, it's a very important position, and I mean, in my career in law enforcement, I've been through a lot of different personalities. I want to say McGrath was the Attorney General when I got out of the academy. So that would have been the first one I had exposure to. And he was, at his time, when he first started, he was decent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was well respected. And then it really bothered me, kind of like the road he went down. And not saying anything negative about him. I'm sure in his own political world and the time in his life and when he was in there, he was doing what was appropriate. It just was weird. I always struggled with him as far as an attorney general.
Yeah.
I struggled with him on a lot of different issues. And then I remember when would have been
Bullock was after him.
Bullock was after him. And Bullock, it was the same as the first term. I was like, okay, I can get behind this. And then it always kind of seemed to kind of fade away, where it was like, the only thing I gave Bullock a lot of credit for was he did a good job of keeping a promise. McGrath wouldn't sign the HR 218. Well, he wouldn't sign. I'm sorry. He wouldn't make a ruling on HR 218 so that we could put it into effect in Montana. Basically, that we needed some attorney general opinion, or so some people thought, I guess, at the time. And the one thing I did like that Bullock did was he did that. He kept that promise. He got that ball moving forward.
Okay,
and got after it. And so I really appreciated him for that, because that was a big deal for those that are watching. HR 218 is retired and current law enforcement ability to carry a firearm in all 50 states. It's like a nationwide concealed weapon permit.
Reciprocity,
yeah. So, I've had a lot of interesting struggles, but I think also, and this is kind of, we're going to do background on you, but I kind of want to jump to this like right away, because I think this is the thing that I want people to understand about you and your position the most, is the attorney general position, just by its definition, and I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, Libertarian, I don't care. you are not going to make everybody happy.
Never.
It's not going to happen.
Never. Yeah.
And I've seen, been thrust into a lot of those environments already. Can you kind of describe that? So, and maybe give a couple examples of decisions you made, or
Yeah,
opinions
for sure.
made? Yeah,
Yeah. It's very true. I'm pretty open. Like I'm a pretty strong, staunch conservative. I mean, I'm Republican, but I'm pretty conservative on that spectrum. But I've noticed, I mean, it just seems like no matter how many conservative things I do, there's always people further on the right. They're just like, well, yeah, but you didn't do this. I mean, one that comes up a lot right now is people are really fired up about election integrity. Everyone, we've got to secure our election, and which is true. I mean, I have concerns about this, but I get people just, and this has come up today. I get people just all over me. Well, why aren't you doing anything about our elections in Montana? Well, because I'm not authorized to. Like, under Montana law, that's not a tool that I have the ability to do anything about. Like, I have no authority. I can't come in and investigate if people think there's something fishy. I get those all the time. There's something going on in X county, and we think the election administrator is shady, and you need to come in and do an investigation. Like, I can't. And you know this as a sheriff, right? Like, I'm in charge of the state division of criminal investigation. Well, as you know, I can't just send DCI agents in. We have to be requested by local law enforcement before we have any jurisdiction. Only upon an ask and an invite are we allowed to come in. And a lot of people just don't get that, and a lot of them don't want to hear that.
Let's expand on that a little bit. Who can ask and invite you?
Well, I mean, I think just by custom, it's always either the sheriff or local PD. Like, that's how we handle it.
Right.
I mean, DCI is a law enforcement organization. Like, I think if we got a phone call from like a county commissioner, I think even at that point, I would still not be comfortable. I would have to have an invite from a county sheriff.
What about a county attorney?
I think even then, because a county attorney doesn't have any investigative law enforcement authority, the county attorney is only involved once charges are filed or once a police report is done, an investigative report is done, right? Because that was my job before this, right?
Absolutely. No.
Yeah. I mean, I had no authority as the county attorney to go to my sheriff in Roosevelt County and go, you need to go investigate that. It didn't work that way.
What I like about what you're saying is it's about limited government.
Exactly.
And what I don't like, I just got back from San Diego, which, by the way, is beautiful. And I do see why everyone lives there, because the temperature is amazing.
Yeah.
There's lots of fun stuff to do. But one of the things I see in states like that is their attorney generals are demanding their law enforcement do X, Y, Z, and the representative government goes away. So someone in Helena starts telling someone in Roosevelt County, because I'll use that example because you did. How different is Helena and Roosevelt County? I mean, they're black and white.
Two different countries.
Exactly. So now you get someone in Helena dictating what someone in Roosevelt County should do. Well, part of law enforcement is culture. And people sometimes fail to recognize that. Yes, you and I are both law and order people, right? We believe in law and order. It's not that we don't. But there is a little bit of respect for the culture of each different community, county, and sometimes cities within counties are different too.
Well, and it's local control. I mean, you are accountable locally. I mean, you're the local elected sheriff. And this is another thing that people don't understand. I get people calling me all the time. My sheriff or this sheriff deputy violated my rights. You need to do something about this. And again, I know you know this, but for your listeners, the Attorney General, I have absolutely zero authority over any of the sheriff's offices, over any of the sheriff's, police departments, police chiefs. I think there's a lot of thought out there that the Attorney General can somehow give orders to like the local sheriffs. I can't. There's no authority for me to do that. The only relationship I have with you guys and with sheriffs is this, and it behooves me to get along with you guys and try to be cooperative. Because that relationship is important, but there's no supervisory authority there at all. Like you, and that's the way it should be. I like that. You guys are locally elected. You're locally accountable. That's the way the system works.
Government is lowest level. You know, I mean, it works. It
Yeah.
really does work.
Yep.
Sometimes we look at communities and we think, oh, that community's failed. Well, the problem is those people elected those individuals.
Right.
They chose for failed government. They actually made a choice.
Yeah.
You know, and so talk to me about your relationship with the other county attorneys and prosecutors. So is there 56 elected?
Some of them are combined. There's some of the real rural counties, like out where I'm from, they're combined.
So there's 50 probably ish.
Yeah.
Elected county attorneys in the state of Montana. Talk to me really quick about the Attorney General's basically authority or purview as it relates to them.
Yeah. So I'll back up. Like that's what my job was before this. I was the Roosevelt County attorney. I was elected in Roosevelt County. I went to Wolf Point to the courthouse every day and prosecuted. That was my job. So I have a lot of respect for those people. Technically, under state law, the Attorney General in Montana does have supervisory authority over all the county attorneys. So, I mean, functionally what that means is like, yeah, technically I could pick up the phone and call the county attorney in any of the counties and, you will do this, you won't do that. I can do that. Any AG in Montana can do that. Gets used very, very rarely. Like that's not something that I like to do. And again, just because I was a county attorney, like I have a tremendous amount of respect for that local elected office and for prosecutorial discretion. A lot of times those county attorneys are seeing things and looking at things that doesn't make it to Helena.
Right.
Because I get asked that a lot. I'm asked all the time, well, you need to do something about this county attorney. They're violating my rights. And so, okay, I might call that county attorney and just say, hey, what's going on here?
Right.
And then I'll usually get the other side of the story that, I wasn't told about. And you go, oh, well, okay. Yeah. Well,
yeah. Have a nice day.
Good job. Go on as you were. Now, yeah. I have taken some flack because there's been a couple of instances. One real prominent instance when I first got elected that I did step in and direct a county attorney in Gallatin County to dismiss a lawsuit because I thought it was just overtly political and it was overtly unconstitutional and un-American, and I really didn't like it. And that was when Gallatin County sued a local business for violating local COVID ordinances. Right. Specifically, he was staying open past 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because I guess COVID got more dangerous after 10 o'clock. That was one that that was one I felt like I needed to come in and kind of send the message statewide, right? Like, your local health departments can issue all the tickets they want, but at the end of the day, it's up to your local county attorney to actually either prosecute those things or do like what was done in Gallatin County. They literally sued that business owner.
Yeah.
Which was horrifying.
Yeah.
This was a business owner who was trying to keep his employees employed. He's trying to keep the payroll moving and keep customers in the door. And he got sued by his own government for that. And so that was when I stepped in and I just went, yeah, you will dismiss this lawsuit. And the county didn't like it. The county attorney didn't like it. And they screamed and they tried to fight me for about a day until they read the statute. And they're like, well, and they finally did it. So,
well,
yeah,
I know I really appreciate your stance on that. I really, really do. Because I was really upset during that time. I mean, I was so frustrated and I kept trying to remind people because I had county commissioners. I said a county commissioner. I had a lot of people in local government who were like, hey, we need to do more. We need to enforce this.
Oh, for sure.
And I was always reminding them, I'm like, do you understand the circle of life here? We're in government and all these people were in government at that time, making, good paychecks, making a good living, having healthcare, all these other things, job security. And you're going to take job security away from the people, by the way, which in the circle of life, their taxes pay your salary.
Right.
And I don't mean that in, my taxes pay your salary, the old grumpy old man on the lawn.
Yeah.
I don't mean it like that. I mean, literally, we know in government, especially businesses, the taxes off businesses are the ones that fund government. And we were, there was a mandate and there was a impression that we were supposed to go in there and shut them down and stop them from their livelihood, stop them from putting food on their table, stop them from putting their kids through college. but we were allowed to do it.
Well, and it was like I even had a little earlier. Like I was the county attorney in Roosevelt when all that came down. When McGrath issued the Supreme Court orders, okay, but then also you had the Bullock as governor executive order, and it was long, but basically they dumped enforcement on the counties.
Yep.
Well, like we want you to do all these things, and COVID's super dangerous, and people can't, they have to wear a mask, and they can't social gather, and got to close businesses at 10 o'clock. But hey, you counties, you be the bad guys, and you take care of that for us.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it was a conversation that my sheriff, Jason Frederick, a great guy and a patriot, and
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. I still talk to Jason, and he's an awesome sheriff. But we both looked at this thing and we're just like, I don't think we can do this. Like, we're going to get sued and we're going to lose badly. The problem I had is I had a county health department that was just absolutely power drunk.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like they had never had it so good, and this was the best thing ever. And they were running around to businesses and threatening to put people in jail.
Oh, terrible.
I had a county health nurse. She came to the county commissioners, and she was so proud of herself. She had a proposal. She wanted a full-time sheriff deputy to go on station. She went to one of the local flea bag motels in Roosevelt County on her own time, on her own volition, and she made a deal with them because on the reservation we had a pretty significant transient population. She wanted the county sheriff to round up all of the tribal transients and make them involuntarily quarantine at this hotel.
Okay.
That she had gone and already made a deal with, and we're going to pay them this rate, and this is going to be awesome. And
Sounds like jail.
boy, that's exactly what I said.
Sounds like jail.
That's literally what I said. So she's making this pitch to me, and she's so proud of herself, and she wants a full-time deputy there to make sure they don't leave. And I went, so like jail. And she goes, no, it's not jail. I mean, it's a motel. We're going to feed them, and they're going to have a bed, and there's a TV.
Sounds like jail.
And I went, right, like jail. She's like, well, no, it's not jail. And I went, well, but then you want a sheriff deputy to make sure they don't leave.
The only thing you're missing is, are you going to pay for all their health care? I mean, that's the only thing you're missing. So actually you're kind of in violation of their human rights because you're not.
Well, yeah. And I mean, then you add the tribal wrinkle into all that. Like, that was a huge federal liability. I'm just like, we're not doing this. Like, no, you can't do it. B, I'm not helping you enforce this. And neither is the sheriff. Like, you can go talk to him, but he and I have already talked. Like, this isn't happening. And so that was super frustrating. And then she tried it again as soon as I got elected Attorney General, but I wasn't sworn in yet. I was still the sitting county attorney. I think she thought I was already gone, and she came back to the commission and tried it again, just because she thought I was out of the way.
Oh wow!
And so I had to stop it. I mean, it was just crazy, but that was going on all over the state.
50-2-120. And they used it to the fullest. And that was the law. I know you know it, but for everyone listening, that basically said, and it was this law from like what? It was like the 60s.
It went back even further than that. A lot of that stuff was the Spanish flu epidemic.
And it basically said in there that the sheriff or a chief will follow during a pandemic, will follow the orders of the health officer, public health officer. And if you did not, you were guilty of a misdemeanor and can be removed from office. And it was a thing that it gave a lot of people pause, when you're standing up and you're fighting, you're like, how does this, but we were all like this. We're like, who enforces that? And how does it go into effect? And
county attorneys.
Yeah. And it was crazy. Right. And I'll never forget. I mean, I remember, it was a guy in the House. I forgot his name. I feel bad. I forgot his name because he's a great guy. And Steve Fitzpatrick wrote the bill to kill that in the 2021 session. And I just remember I was like, I testified at every hearing I could get to. And I was like, this has got to go. This is a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah.
And they wanted to basically take the Constitution and just throw it in a fire pit.
Well, yeah, because that probably pretty clearly violates due process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, no trial, no no,
no,
no jury. You're just you're guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. So let's go back in time real quick. So where were you born and raised?
Born and raised up in northeastern Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roosevelt County through and through.
Okay.
Farm and ranch kid, grew up at a little town called Bainville.
Okay.
Our farm and ranch is literally right on the highway, right on Highway 2, just outside of Bainville, Montana, a town of about maybe 200.
And so, like, your family, what did they do? What was it? They in agriculture?
Farmers and ranchers. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm the first lawyer of anywhere anybody in the family can find.
And what made you? Yeah. When in your academic life or your growing up did all of a sudden that appear like a good idea?
It was a very sudden thing. Like I tell people the story, and a lot of times I think maybe they don't believe it, but it's absolutely true. Went to Montana State University. So graduated high school from Culbertson. That's the next little town, the big town. My mom had moved to town and gotten a job. So we were like 10 miles away from our farm. Graduated high school there, went to Montana State, met my wife. We got married actually the year before we graduated college, but graduated college, moved back home to the farm. Like we were living in the house that I grew up in the farmhouse in Bainville. And we were starving. I mean, I moved home to the farm with my dad. And after about a year and a half, like we had to sit down with a calculator and a pencil and just be like, prices are in the toilet. Wheat's not worth anything. Like that, I think that year we literally figured out we'd be money ahead to go buy wheat and just put it in the bin rather than pay for fuel, fertilizer, and our time and seed it and grow it that year. Like that's how bad it was. But it was just like, we sat down and I'm just like, you got to go do something else.
Was that representative of how many mouths that farm had to feed, or was that just representative of the whole industry in general?
Well, I mean, we're not a big farm,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it certainly was a function of scale, but I also think that was pretty indicative of what was going on in a lot of places. You know, it was tough. It was tough to be in agriculture, and equipment kept getting more expensive and bigger, and price of fuel, price of fertilizer, and insurance, just all those things. You kind of had to grow your operation and keep acquiring more and more ground. We kind of tried to do more like intense agriculture, concentrated. You know, we added a bunch of irrigation systems, and that certainly allows you to grow more and do more, and that's all good stuff. But I mean, at the end of the day, there wasn't enough there for everybody. So
we have a lot of people in agriculture on this podcast, and that's not changed.
Oh, I think it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. And people have to understand that growing our food is so, I mean, it doesn't come from the grocery store.
And I think people in Montana generally understand that. Yeah.
In general, I think we're getting a lot of people coming in from out of state who understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a vital thing. So to hear you say that, it's like, it's super disheartening, because it's just like, oh my gosh.
Well, but I mean, that's what happened. I mean, so law school literally was a lark. It was not something I had ever thought about, planned on. I got a political science degree in college. Well, I got a double major. I got a political science and I got a justice studies, because honestly, I kind of thought about moving home and not running, but maybe getting hired on by the sheriff's department. I thought about being a cop. So that's kind of what I was maybe thinking as a backup plan. And that just kind of ended up turning into, well, I guess that would work for law school. But I mean, the time from crap, we got to do something else and leave the farm, to taking the LSAT and applying for law school was about over the span of 2 months.
Wow.
I mean, it was.
What year is this? What
that would have been like 04 or 05.
Okay.
Probably, I think we graduated college in 04. We're on the farm for a year. So I think 05.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, somewhere right in there.
Okay. So you're just like, I'm going to see if this works.
Totally. And I only applied to the one school because I was just like, well, I'm either going to stay in state or I'm not going to go. Okay. So one law school in Montana is at Missoula.
Sorry. So are you a Bobcat fan or a Grizz fan?
Yes.
Oh, that was really
no. I've always been a Bobcat. I've always been a Bobcat. The school doesn't always treat me the best
Well,
for some political stuff
They're
from my
not-
time in the
they're
legislature,
not
but
the way they used to be.
yeah,
That used to be the ag
totally.
college.
I mean, it was all cowboy boots and did the like real cowboy boots.
Yeah.
Then downtown Bozeman when I was there.
CNFR. It wasn't
Yeah.
the big city cowboys that you see there now.
Yeah. Not,
I was
not
there.
the Yellowstone flat brimmed hats.
I was there with my wife for the Trump rally,
Mhm.
and we spent the whole day walking around downtown.
Yeah.
And I'm down there, and I was wearing my cowboy boots and cowboy hat, getting ready for the rally. And I see this guy pass me with a flat brim hat and flip flops,
There's a lot of that.
and I was just like, "This must be the Bozeman cowboy." I just
Mhm.
had to laugh anyway. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
But-
downtown Bozeman is not what it was 25 years ago.
Oh no. So my parents owned a restaurant down there.
Really?
You know where Baker Bob's is?
Yeah. Burger Bob's.
Burger Bob.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm thinking of the guy here. Jeez. Burger Bob's next to Cannery. That used to be called the Slaughterhouse, and it was a steakhouse.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they owned that down there, and they had a bad business. They had a shady business partner, and he embezzled some money, so they had to like sell
man.
it, and then it became Burger Bob's, and been there forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but downtown Bozeman was super. It's always cool. It's still cool now. It's just Lululemon
It's
now.
pretty bougie.
Yeah, it's pretty bougie.
Pretty bougie.
But back in the day, I mean, it was one of the coolest downtowns ever. So
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun in Bozeman. Did you? Going to school? I thought that was seriously.
Yes.
Like, and
Absolutely.
I don't-
yeah. Well, Bozeman was great.
I mean, just like what a good time, and just
But
I always like-
you still had a lot of rural kids. Like
Tons,
the
tons.
reason I had so much fun is because a lot of my friends from Eastern Montana and
Yeah.
farm kids and ranch kids, they're getting an ag business degree. They're getting an ag ed degree, like my wife did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a lot of like-minded. You had a lot of ag kids that were still there.
but it was a really super safe community.
Oh yeah.
It was super. There was tons to do. It was chill. And it was back then. I mean, I went in the 90s. You were in the early 2000s. It was affordable.
Yeah.
And now it's just crazy.
I mean, my oldest daughter is about to turn 18 and she wants to think about Bozeman. And I'm like, I don't know how anyone affords to live there as a college student.
You're going to live in the dorm for your entire
forever. Yes.
You're not getting an apartment.
Yeah. It's just crazy when you look at the cost
It
of
is.
housing there now.
It is absolutely crazy. So you go to Missoula, you go to law school. So did you get accepted right away?
Right away.
Wow.
I don't know if I was just the token farm kid.
Yeah.
Like that certainly was how it worked out, like in the classes. Like anytime there was a farm and ranch question or a case that dealt with farming and ranching, everyone's just like, Knudsen, is that right? Like I was the token farm kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I got in right away. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy how fast it all happened because it was never a plan. It was almost on a lark and just bam, took the LSAT, bam, applied, bam, got in.
That's so great.
And we moved.
Yeah. And then you moved.
Yeah.
Moved. Did you kind of live? Did you like work part time and live off student loans while you were in law school?
Lived off student loans. My wife worked like 3 different jobs. I mean, God bless her. I mean, she basically put me through law school.
She's an awesome lady.
I far outkicked my coverage.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And then we had our first child the
Oh.
day before second year law school started. I don't recommend that.
No, I don't.
That was
either.
not awesome planning, but
No.
yeah, we welcomed our first child right in the middle of law school.
Good for you.
Yeah. No,
That's
I mean, it was
awesome.
great. It was fun.
That's awesome. Did you find law school like was it really challenging or
I mean, I certainly realized about after my first semester, like, oh, this is not undergrad.
right?
I'm actually going to have to knuckle down here and treat this like a job and do some work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Did you have good professors?
I mean, I got my degree.
Yeah. Did you, I mean, but anybody remarkable that you were like, that you went to school and was like, oh man, that,
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple. I mean, certainly I took constitutional law from Rob Nadelson. Rob's I mean, he's brilliant. And he had a whole fight just to get that position because he's a pretty outspoken conservative.
right.
And Law School is not exactly known as a place friendly to conservatives.
Really?
Yeah, weird.
Weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah. Cynthia Ford. Cynthia Ford is still a dear friend of mine. We agree on nothing politically, but she's just an amazing lady. She taught civil procedure. I was on the trial team, so she was our coach. She was still one of the best teachers I've ever had. She's fantastic.
Dan Wilson and I got into this conversation a little bit, and it amazes me how people can politicize the law. And he was talking about it because that was one of the things he was just so excited about running for Supreme Court and doing. He's like, listen, the law is the law. Just follow it.
Yeah.
If you are putting stuff into it, then you're politicizing it. And he was talking about it and going on. And it scares me that in our country today, I know a lot of people who have law degrees or that are practicing attorneys or that are in politics that are is so polarized, and they argue over the law. And it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Stop trying to make it something it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I struggled in law school just with the politics of it.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Like I was one of the probably 2 or 3 kind of open Republican conservatives in the law school. I found out later there were more. They just kept their mouth shut.
They just didn't talk about it.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't talk about it much either. Like my attitude towards law school was I was just going to keep my head down and get my degree and get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Don't give anybody a reason to.
Yeah. I mean,
you.
and there was plenty of that going on. I mean, you can talk to Lieutenant Governor Juris. I mean, she was one of my professors. At that time, she was an adjunct professor and she did great. I mean, talk about somebody who actually had some real world experience. She'd been a lawyer here in Great Falls for years, done a lot of property law, ag law, farm and ranch stuff, water rights. That's the stuff I was looking to learn.
Right.
And what I found in law school is there was several professors teaching this stuff who'd never practiced.
Yeah.
They'd never had a client before. They were lawyers, but they were academicians.
Right.
Who had only ever worked at the university. And like, well, how are you teaching me tort law when you've never done a tort case?
Absolutely.
Like I can read a book.
Well, and there's zero human element in that.
Totally.
Zero.
Yeah.
When you get to that level of academia where you graduate, you become a professor, and you've earned the title. Let's say you passed the bar, you've done all that stuff, but you've never actually dealt with the whole human element of the law. I'm sorry, but that doesn't.
I mean, probably one of the most frustrating things that happened to me in law school is I was asked as a third year in my final year to sit as the student representative on the faculty hiring panel, because at that time they were advertising for a new environmental law professor. And everybody wanted to move to Montana, so we had 100 different applicants. And the students actually had a vote. They had one vote on the hiring committee, and my peers asked me to do it. And well, okay, fine. I spent weeks reading resumes, figuring out who all these people were. And I was really interested. There was a couple who had really significant real world life experience practicing and working for corporations and nonprofits. And the day of the meeting, I came in, I sat down, and the faculty promptly voted to take away the student vote.
Wow.
Because basically they're like, well, we can't have kids involved in this. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm 26 years old.
Yeah.
I'm a father. This is professional school. This is grad school. I'm not, this isn't 6th grade.
Yeah.
But secondly, thanks for wasting my time. And I literally just got up and left. Well, if I don't have a vote, I'm not sitting here.
Do you know what the huge mistake they make about that is it's always really, really good to get someone's perspective who is a student of your craft, right? But isn't tainted by the real world yet. You're tainted by the real world from your life experience. Yeah. But as a practicing lawyer, you haven't been out there doing it yet. You're not tainted. Yeah. You are looking at it from this very innocent view of the way it should be.
Well, just as a student is how I was thinking. Who would I want to learn environmental law from?
Yeah.
Some 24-year-old just graduated law student, which is what they end up hiring, by the way.
Yeah.
Or, hey, here's a 60-year-old guy who's retiring from his law practice, who's worked for all these different environmental groups and companies, who's got a wealth of hands-on, real practical experience that I personally would like to learn from this person. It wasn't even considered.
And I know this from my own experience, and I also know this just from PsyOps stuff. When you hire that person who's not qualified, okay, who has no life experience, they check a box, right? They've made the minimum qualifications. You're hiring somebody because you want to mold them into who you want them to be. And I'm not saying that's always bad. It's not always bad, but if you're looking for someone who's critically thinking,
Right.
comes with experience, it's bad.
To be teaching
Teaching, yes.
new lawyers, I think that's a bad thing.
Like we hire young deputies all the time.
Well, sure.
And I will hire for character over experience a lot.
Well, and probably a lot of times you might be hiring bad habits.
Exactly. Or they've bounced around from so many organizations
Yeah.
and you're like, well, this person's never happy.
Right.
Where if I hire the local person who's got great character, we can teach them how to be a great cop.
Yep.
You know, sometimes I can't teach somebody who's got a bunch of bad. I mean, and that doesn't work in all situations. It's all situational dependent, but it seems like the red flag in that situation, especially when they're required to mentor and teach. And it's just, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's how
Yeah.
that went down.
So then you obviously graduate from law school.
Yeah.
And then did you take the bar right away?
I did. Yeah. That was the most stressful thing in my life.
Was it really?
Yeah. Yeah. That was stressful.
How long does it take the bar? Take the bar, sorry.
Well, it's a little different now. They've changed the test since I took it. So I took it in 2008. They've now adopted the uniform bar exam, which is a little more uniform across the state. So it used to be like we kind of did our own thing. But it was 2 full days.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be, you had 3 years worth of learning and you literally could be tested on any of it. So, I mean, we spent that summer, I had to send my wife and my toddler away because I was studying 12 hours a day to take this thing, for the 2 months leading up to it.
Wow.
Just cramming, reading constant. I've never been so stressed in my life. I wasn't sleeping like that. And Christy was pregnant with our second at that time.
Oh, geez.
And so by finally I'm just like, you have to go to your folks' and like, I can't have this distraction,
Yeah.
which was terrible. Right. Like
It's terrible, but you're at a point in your life where you couldn't fail.
yeah. Right. So yeah, I'm glad I never have to do that again.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
I hope.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding. So what do you do after you pass the bar?
Moved home.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went right back to Eastern Montana. And I got hired by a law firm in Plentywood. So that was right when the Bakken oil field was taken off.
Yeah.
And that was, basically right across the line from us, Williston, North Dakota, Watford City.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of that was spilling over in eastern Roosevelt County. They found some oil there and Sheridan County. And there was only a couple of law firms in the state who were doing kind of the oil and gas, leasing, property law, title work. And that's stuff I was always kind of interested in. I like property law. It made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got hired by them right away and worked up there in Plentywood for about 5 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So are you an associate at the firm?
Yeah.
Are you? So,
Yeah. Flunky.
So that means you're doing all the work.
Yeah.
You're hustling.
I was
Okay,
hustling.
Awesome. So
But learning and great guys to learn from. Learned a ton of stuff.
Oh, I can imagine. No, I think that's where you kind of like really get into it and get going. So what'd you do after that?
Well, so that overlapped with my legislative service. Not long after I graduated law school and moved home. Apparently people figure if you get a law degree, you must be smart. I don't know. But yeah, I got asked to run for the legislature, maybe a year later.
Okay.
And I said no for a long time, but finally I got wore down. And so ran for the state house and got elected. And so there was some overlap there and that caused some friction with the bosses. And I ran some legislation they didn't like. They ended up firing me. So in 2013, I hung out with my own shingle. I went out on my own.
Oh, really?
Opened my own office in my hometown. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builder's solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. So that's an interesting point you bring up, though, about the friction with your bosses. You know, when you're practicing law and you're doing this. I see a lot of people that practice law. Typically, well, I shouldn't say that. The people I see who do it when they're younger, it's a family firm thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Their old man's got he's the partner.
Yeah,
and they're the associate type of thing. I see that. What you're talking about.
Well, that's what I went to work for. It was a father and a son.
Right, but not your father. That's what I'm getting at. Not your father.
Right.
See, if it was your father, it might be different. But that's what I typically see. And so that was a big risk you took. And obviously they wore you down and they got you to do it. But you had to have that? What did you run on the first time you ran? What got you passionate and made you flip the switch?
Ultimately, it was that we had a state representative up there who said one thing when she was at home, but then when she went to Helena, she voted completely differently. I really didn't. The more I researched, she wasn't voting our district.
Okay.
She'd come home and she'd talk extremely conservative, because we're a very, very rural district up there, probably the most rural in the state. It's ag, it's ranching, farming. And so she'd talk very conservative, and then she'd go to Helena, and I started looking at her voting record, honestly. Right. And I was getting recruited pretty heavily, and I said no for a long time. Because honestly, I was at a point in my life, I'm 27, 28, whatever I was, and I was just like, there's got to be somebody better, smarter than me. I'm just getting my feet under me. I've been in college for, 8 years. And
you probably invest all this money in school. You're like, I need to go make some money.
There was that too.
I've got kids now.
Yeah.
This is my world's different.
Well, and I got lied to. I mean, frankly, because I asked the question, well, I don't know about the legislature. Is it going to take much time? Oh, no. It's super easy.
Yeah. It's just this it
won't affect your life.
3-month period of your life. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Once every 2 years.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
No, we have great legislature here in Great Falls, and they work 24/7.
It's a big job.
They never stop working, ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
To do it right.
Right.
I mean, if you're doing the job the way it needs to be done, it is a full-time job.
Yeah. So, so then you went into the House, right?
Yeah. I did all 4. I termed out of the House.
Yeah. You termed out. Because you ended up being speaker twice, right?
I did, yeah.
Are you the only person that's ever done that? I don't know anybody else.
Since term limits, I'm told. So term limits were put in by voter referendum, I think in 91.
Okay.
I think 91. I'm told I'm the first multi-term speaker since term limits.
Wow.
I mean,
that's awesome.
Well, but I tell people it's a function of term limits. I'm all for term limits, but ours in the Montana legislature are way too short. They're way too short. So what you end up with, you get 4 sessions in the House and 4 sessions in the Senate. By the time you learn anything, you're termed out and you're done.
Yeah.
Because that's functionally what happens.
Right.
And you're bringing in new people who don't know where the bathrooms are.
Yeah.
let alone how to balance a $14 billion state budget in 90 days.
Yeah. Which is a big lift.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember when you were running for AG, now 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. I remember, I was politically savvy a little bit, but I wasn't as up on everything as I was. And I started researching you, and I was like, oh yeah, I figured I was going to vote for you, but I was like, who is this guy and all this other stuff. And that's when I realized, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Cause I had been in the MPPA, and then with sheriffs, I go to legislation all the time. I'm always there. And so I understand like the hierarchy of how it gets to how you end up in those positions. And I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy, you know? And because I remember thinking to myself, and don't take offense to this, it's just your initial impression of your world at the time. It's like, how's this guy from Eastern Montana going to win this thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I educated myself rather quickly, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. You know, he's done some things in Illinois.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I distinguished myself early on. I don't know. I mean, I truly tell people, because I get that a lot, like, oh, you're Speaker of the House and you're, whatever I was, 28, 29. No, I think that's when I first got elected. I think I was probably like 32 or 33 when I got elected Speaker. And then people are like, oh, that's amazing. I'm like, that should terrify you. I'm a 33-year-old kid and I'm the Speaker of the House. Like, yeah, don't you see a problem here?
No, I agree with that statement. I do. And it should terrify people, because I've been, but isn't that the God thing though? Like I've been in positions, and some days I currently am, where I don't have any business being in the position I'm in. And I think it's like faith that guides you into those. Like God picks people because he knows they're going to be good servants and masters to him, not necessarily because they have all the experience in the world. And I do realize the hypocrisy of what I just said after the statement about the 24-year-old environmental attorney. I do understand that. But what I'm getting at, where I'm trying to grasp though, is you can get that job when you're 24. It's that, who do you serve when you get that job when you're 24? Do you serve the bosses? Do you serve the material world, or do you serve faith and a higher calling? Because if you do, you're going to be successful.
And that I'm glad to hear you say that, because I mean, honestly, my wife and I for years, we've just been like this clearly is a path we've been put on. I guess we're supposed to do this, and so we'll do it.
Exactly.
Because I still don't know how I got here. I still don't know how a farm kid from Bainville ended up going to law school and then was in the legislature and then Speaker, and now I'm the AG. Like I don't know how that happened. Because by all accounts, it should not have.
No, it shouldn't. It absolutely shouldn't. But I think it's because if you're truly guided by faith and guided by a higher purpose, it just happens. And the hardest part is accepting it. And
the hardest part is learning to recognize it, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think as I've gotten older, I no longer need a ton of bricks dropped on my head to get me to do what I'm supposed to go do. I can just go, oh, okay, got it. Yep.
Got it.
We'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think about that with that, and I don't know where it is, and you might not be able to talk about it, but the whole issue with the Supreme Court and you, I think about that, because I mean, I remember talking to you in the Capitol right after they announced that they were basically like coming after you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, I have never told you this before, so I'll tell you this now. I really related to you when we had that conversation, because you shook my hand. I said, hey, how you doing? And I said, I made some stupid comment, something to the effect of, I appreciated you doing it, or I appreciate what you stand for. I just trying to like, and you said to me, and I love what you said. You were like, it doesn't feel so good from this perspective, but thank you. Like you were like, it sucks. Like,
well, there were some sleepless nights.
Yeah.
I mean, that I'm facing the prospect of them disbarring me.
Yeah.
For saying mean things about them.
Right. For First Amendment.
Right. Yeah. I didn't realize when I took an oath to be a lawyer, I gave up my First Amendment rights, but apparently.
In our world today, it's tough. And I remember having that conversation to you. And the thing I wanted to share with you is this, And I think it was maybe because we're both elected officials, so we could kind of understand each other. And so you were vulnerable for like a split second, and you aren't vulnerable very often. You got it pretty squared away, but you're vulnerable with me the split second where I could tell. And I was like, I've been there. Not to the level, but I'm like, I've had target on my back like that. I know what it feels like. And I can't even remember what you said, but just the brief way you described it was like 2 words, but you totally said like, yeah, this sucks. But you then pivoted like immediately to your faith, and you were just like, hey,
well, what else are you going to do?
Somebody else has got this.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said. It's like, he's got this.
Well, and that was the hardest thing, right? And it always is, right? When you're going through trials and when you're getting forged by the hammer and the fire and the file, like Paul said, right? It's not fun.
No.
And it's hard to look at that and go, well, okay, this is clearly for a reason that I'm being tested and being tried here, and that's part of the journey. But it's like when it's going on, it's not fun. It's hard to recognize that. And that was, after like about the 3rd night of not sleeping and stressing, you finally just like, well, this is out of my hands.
Yeah.
This is clearly a test, and God's in control, and win, lose, or draw, whatever happens, God's got a plan. So calm down.
Well, the other thing too, that I think, I don't even know if I need to say this out loud, but you recognize it, is just as much as like, you sometimes feel unworthy at 20 some years old to be in the legislature, and then your 30s be the speaker and then the AG. If God takes that away from you, he's going to give you some other glorious thing that you're not worthy of either.
Yeah. Right.
And you're just going to move on, and life's going to roll. So but in that moment, that is, I don't think people who haven't been in that moment can understand, like, especially when you did things you did, like, you put your family on hold, you go to law school, you strap down, you have 2 kids born during that time. You do all these things, right? And then
mountains of student debt. And
exactly.
Hey, we're going to take that livelihood away from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Just because of something you said. And so is that still ongoing?
Still going? Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. So we've learned some things. So if your listeners don't know, basically with this happened in the 21 legislature, but what happened was the legislature basically caught the district judges and maybe some of the Supreme Court judges, but that's less clear, using their state emails to communicate with each other and basically take positions on legislation that was moving through the Montana legislature. Now, you might say, well, that isn't that big of a deal. It is, because judges routinely hear those cases on the constitutionality of those new laws, and under their own judicial ethics, they're not supposed to opine on those. And so here you had, and that was less even the problem. It was the fact they were using their state time and their state emails to do it.
Right.
So, my state email is public record.
Right.
Public record laws in Montana are very clear. If you're using state hardware and you're using a state email, that's an open record. That's a document that is open to the public in Montana. And so the legislature tried to get all those emails, and the Supreme Court's administrator went, oops, accidentally deleted them.
Right.
Sorry. Well, unbeknownst to them, the legislature was like, well, that's cool. We'll go over to the Department of Administration where all the servers are housed.
Right.
And we'll just get them off the servers.
Those emails should never be deleted.
Right. Yeah. Well, then the court really panicked. They went into full out damage control, called themselves in on a Sunday, called the Supreme Court chief clerk, who's elected. They made him come in. They called him at church and made him leave church on Sunday to come in so they could file an emergency order. Wow. I don't think they'd do that if I asked them to.
Right.
I don't think the Supreme Court would come in on a Sunday.
No.
If I asked them to. So, yeah, they went into overtime, ordered those emails be turned back over. They were already out in the press at that point.
Yeah.
So, boiled down, that's what happened. And then I took some pretty strong positions on the actions they were taking. I'm a former legislator, but I'm also, at that time, I was the lawyer for the legislature.
Right.
That's my client.
That's who you represent.
I was zealously representing my client, as is my legal obligation. And for my efforts there, I got a 41 count ethics complaint filed against me with the Office of Disciplinary Counsel which answers to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's still pending. We couldn't figure out they didn't notify me that they were doing it until 23.
Wow.
2 full years later. I'm like, why did this take so long?
Well, because 2024 is coming.
Well, but we found out why. The reason was the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, the first investigator lawyer that they hired, longtime Democrat, he came in, did an investigation, and recommended no charges.
Okay.
Because he said this is political. This is inter branch.
Yeah.
They had 2 branches of government fighting. Like this is not something that is appropriate for us to be involved in. So I recommend no charges. We didn't know that. The Office of Disciplinary Counsel fired him and hired an even further left
A person that would.
and that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we're like, why did this come 2 years later? And we didn't find that out until we actually got in the process and basically discovery. And we just said, well, we want to see the entire investigation packet. And that's when that came out.
And I want people to hear this and understand this, because I think we see everything that's happening like with Donald Trump right now.
It's lawfare.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm pretty certain it's got so many people so mad and so frustrated. I mean, because we've seen shady stuff from both parties, especially at the national level, for years. I mean, this has never been
Politics is politics, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, we've also suspected politicians of crimes and all sorts of stuff, but it's on a whole nother level now, a whole nother level. And for people that are watching this to think that this doesn't happen in Montana, because I mean, that's what a lot of people believe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just DC stuff.
No, it's
That's just
happening here.
DC politics. And wow. So yeah, I appreciate you talking about that and sharing that, because I think I just want people to understand that this type of behavior is real.
It's happening right here.
It's real.
Yep.
It's here. It's,
And I kind of wear it as a badge of honor, honestly. Like I figure you're not over the target if you're not taking flack.
well, and you have to, and the reason you have to is because if you don't have the courage to stand up for what's right, and you don't have to, and you don't have the courage to speak the truth. And the truth is this, well, this is the law. This needs to be followed.
Yeah.
And there is consequences if you don't.
Yeah.
And if you're not in that and you wiggle your way around stuff or you avoid it, then what happens is the people suffer.
Yeah, and this one I think is particularly egregious because it's this idea that judges are beyond reproach in Montana, and you're somehow as a lawyer, I have an ethical and moral obligation to not be critical of judges. If you've seen some of the stuff I've seen in courtrooms that lawyers do to disrespect judges every single day, I mean, that's stuff that probably is unethical.
Right.
Me and my political position being critical of the Supreme Court for positions they've taken and for overtly political acts that they've taken. I mean, I don't think we're at that level, but apparently this is where we are today. And they threaten your law license, and I'm at risk of being disbarred and losing my law license.
And, I've seen it, not to that level, but I've been threatened. It's funny. I've actually publicly, I was very outspoken against Judge Larson during COVID over putting that person in jail for a mask. And I had another judge call me and tell me, you realize he could hold you in contempt for that. And I'm like, no, he can't. I'm not dumb. I'm not before his court. I'm not in his court. You can't hold me for contempt for my First Amendment speech. And I didn't say anything disparaging about the judge. I didn't call him a name or accuse or make a false accusation. I said, this is wrong and we can't go this far. And this was an overreach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I saw that too, obviously not to the level you did. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, they actually think that there's a way that they could hold me in contempt for that. And then I also remember being threatened to be held in contempt because I refused to arrest people for not wearing a mask. And I remember, well, we're going to hold you in contempt. And I was like, okay, but how are you going to do that? Number one, I'm not even in your court.
Right.
And number two, and I guess it would be because I'd hold my bailiff and then I'd go stand up for my bailiff because I wouldn't allow my bailiff to get in trouble. So I guess that's how it would happen. And then I'm like, well, then, okay, but who's going to arrest me and what jail are you going to put me in?
Right. You have the keys.
I mean, but and here's the other thing I know is there's no other sheriff's going to hold a sheriff.
Yeah.
So good luck.
Well,
Especially over
and that's what was so crazy about COVID. It became this clash between two co-equal branches of government, right? Like that's literally what we had going on here.
Yep.
And it was the same in my case too. But yeah, I mean, I had a tremendous amount of respect for the positions you took there. I mean, that was awesome, and the way I think you represented your constituents and your county perfectly, and I think people really appreciated the stance you took. But that boils down to one branch of government, the judicial branch, telling another branch of government, the executive, because that's where you fall.
Yeah.
And there's always a natural tension there.
I'm always making a statement about, one judge in particular. I'm like, run for sheriff.
Yeah.
If you think you can do it better, jump in this arena and go.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to understand, you can make rulings on our cases and on our positions and all this stuff, but there's a certain level where you have to let the executive branch govern. So yeah, it's been utterly crazy. So let's talk real quick. I don't want to spend too much time going down. There's actually a lot of good things that you've done, but let's talk about the future. Where are we headed, Montana? Like what's I mean, you're up for election here in November. Tell me like what we're going to do. What are we going to do? How are we going to make this state better?
Well, I mean, drugs and crime, that's still my biggest focus. I mean, I know it's yours. You're dealing with it here in Great Falls and Cascade County. Montana, we're still dealing with a really, really big cartel drug problem.
Yeah, we are.
And to me, that has to be first and foremost, public safety.
Yep.
Like as the Attorney General, under state statute, top law enforcement officer in the state, like that's the job. If people can't go to work and go to their jobs and run their businesses and go to church safely, then we don't have a state or a society here.
Nope.
So, I mean, that's top line. There's still a lot of stuff we need to do on the law enforcement side. There's things I want to do at the Law Enforcement Academy, which I'm in charge of. That's an organization that's been ignored by the legislature for a lot of years. We've been forced to do more and more and more, train more and more and more, add more and more and more with the same amount of resources,
same money
for 40 years. So there's stuff there, but like there's a ton more to do on the federal side. I mean, the reason we're seeing so much cartel activity and fentanyl in Montana is because the southern border is wide open.
Yeah, you got to turn the faucet off.
You got to turn the faucet, or at least shut the door.
Yeah,
I'm under no illusion that we're going to stop all the drugs in the country, but my God, the answer is not to just throw the front door wide open.
I totally agree. I think a lot of people who believe in mass immigration, I think a lot of them feel like, well, America's the problem because they're the consumer of the drugs. Okay, I honestly can't argue with that. There are probably way too many people in America that want too much of the product and have the means to get it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you let them walk into your neighborhoods and schools.
Right.
You got to make it hard, And
we can control the supply side of this equation somewhat. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. I've seen mass overdoses. I mean, even in my jail, and it's because there's so much fentanyl coming in, and it's a little spooky. There's one big thing that I'm a huge proponent of, and I hope in this next term, I really can get your support behind it. My big thing is all these things that you said, they have to be fixed. Don't get me wrong. But the thing that keeps me up at night is school safety.
Yeah.
I am really worried about our kids and our schools. And I feel that the schools and sometimes the school's ideology, sometimes, not always, isn't conducive of how we're really going to protect our kids. I know we just got a mill levy passed and we got several $100,000 a year that are going towards school safety, and we're doing a ton. We have multiple layers, but I'm going to actually be going to the legislature this year, and I want funding for all the schools in the state of Montana. And I mean, not little bit of funding. I want serious funding to make them harder targets, to make them more secure. We have to start treating our children like we treat our money.
Yes.
Our money gets trucked around in armored vehicles with armed
Yeah.
guards, but our children don't. They get a gun-free zone and a
soft target.
And let's pray. Let's just hope.
Right.
I mean, we have schools that don't even have secured doors.
Yeah.
And that's that one for me. And I think for me, like, I agree with everything you're saying, and you're right. And I fight all those issues, and I worry about those issues. But that's that issue I feel like as a sheriff, I can have direct influence and control over. And I can't control is a bad word. Influence, leadership, the ability to change that equation. But that's the thing that scares me, because I think in all this chaos, if we don't make our kids feel safe and lower their anxiety and make them feel treasured and make them feel like when they're in a learning environment, like they're safe, they're not going to grow up and be all inspiring adults who do great things like you've done. They're just not going to feel like that. I mean, you and I grew up in a time in life and in the world where, I mean, I grew up in Mayberry, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
You didn't feel those anxieties and insecurities. And I don't want our kids to feel them either. So that's like something I'm super, super passionate about.
No, I think you're spot on. That's great. You've got my support, because it's a conversation I had long before I was ever the AG. I mean, it was fights we were having with our school board back home.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I mean, something bad is going to happen at a school in Montana. I hope not, but
right.
Like, it's probably going to happen at some point.
Well, we're law enforcement. We prepare for the worst.
That's our job. We have to, right? And especially after seeing the response at Uvalde and some of those are just
Parkland,
horrifying.
And these are two of our most recent ones,
right?
Yeah.
But a lot of our schools in the state, and this goes to the school boards. It goes to a lot of the administrations. And this is just Mayberry. It's fine. That stuff's not going to happen here. It's going to happen someplace else.
I was just at a training, and I can't remember the guy's last name. It's called Save Alex. His son was killed in Parkland.
Oh, yeah.
The guy's name's Max, the dad. He did a great presentation. And he actually put up the sizes of the communities that were hit the biggest. And they were all of them were class B and C schools in Montana. None of them were be a AA school here. And so when you factor, and those were all the worst ones, and when you factor that in, you're like, of course that's susceptible. Yeah. But I worry about that a lot. I really do. And I think I do because I feel in a way like, in my position particularly, like that's something I better start getting control over. I better start winning that battle. I better start leading that, because some of these issues you talk about, I mean, and by the way, I applaud you because you've filed tremendous lawsuits. You've done great work fighting back against the federal government. We haven't even talked about gun rights yet, but you've done a really good job of that. But it's hard because, right, you've got to get other states to get involved. It's got to go to a circuit court. It's got to move its way through the process. And it just takes, I mean, I imagine you're termed out after this term, right, as AG? Because you do 2 terms as AG? Correct.
Yeah. Assuming I get reelected, that'll be
2028. Yep. 2029.
Yeah, 28. Yep.
Yeah. So I bet you a lot of those lawsuits you file will be decided after you're no longer the Attorney General.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about the federal system is that actually, and especially in a lot of those more controversial stuff, it moves pretty quick, honestly, faster than I thought. But yeah, I mean, some of them not, though.
It hasn't felt like that.
I mean, some of the administrative law stuff that we're doing, like with Department of Interior and environmental law, like those just feel like they go on forever.
Yeah.
Like I think for sure a lot of those will still be languishing.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the really hot button constitutional stuff, the Title IX stuff, the Second Amendment stuff, those have all actually moved fairly quickly.
You've done a really good job, by the way, with Second Amendment. I really, really appreciate you.
Kind of my thing.
Well, it is your thing, but the one thing I appreciate about you is you really do know your stuff when you talk about it. I mean, and obviously, but don't take offense. I know a lot of attorneys that don't.
That's right.
They don't know their stuff when they're talking about it. And some people who are pro 2A and they have no idea. And you're like, okay, I'm a layman and I'm listening to them and I'm like, yeah, but you're forgetting about this. You're forgetting about that. And this is going to bite you. But you've done a really, really good job with that. And I think you've helped really move the needle. And I kind of was laughing because you and I both testified together on House Bill 102. And I think you also testified on 258 too, didn't you? On behalf of that one, HB 258.
Which was 258.
Federal gun control law. The one that was local law enforcement can't enforce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You and I think you and I both
Mhm.
testified together
Yeah.
on those. And the thing I really appreciate was, I remember it's just like everything. There's going to be blood in the streets.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to be terrible. And nothing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've really seen, I know of a successful House Bill 102, a person without a permit, lawfully carrying, didn't need a permit, and took care of two bad guys, here in the city of Great Falls, and very successful.
The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, and Dr. John Lott's been talking about this for 25 years. I mean, I was reading his stuff back in college, but I mean, the numbers are compelling. States with the highest rate of concealed carry have the lowest crime rates.
Yep.
I mean, this is just not rocket science.
Yeah.
Gun-free zones don't work.
Yeah, you can't put a cop in your pocket.
That's right. Yeah.
No, it's true. And you know what I'm finding too, because we're getting self-defense issues and cases come before us. I'm finding like people are being very, very careful about when they deploy it, the use of a weapon, when they use it, how they use. I mean, they're being very careful.
I challenge you to find a more law-abiding section of society.
Yeah.
Of American society. I would posit that the most law-abiding, straight-laced, straight arrow people in America are concealed carry.
Yeah.
Just concealed carriers.
Absolutely.
It behooves you. You have to be. You have to be responsible. You have to know the laws. You have to know what liabilities that brings with it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think the numbers would bear that out as well.
I was in San Diego just with my family, and I'm there with I'm right now, my son moved out, so I'm a girl dad. I got two girls and my wife, and we're cruising around doing our thing. And of course I'm armed. And my level of situational awareness, what I'm paying attention to, I'm always paying attention.
Yeah.
But when I'm armed, I'm really paying attention because I'm worried about two things. I'm worried about, I have the ability to protect people. How do I make sure I do and do appropriately? But then also, how do I make sure somebody doesn't put me in a position of vulnerability where they take my weapon from me?
Right.
Like that scares me too. And so the responsibility that gets like stacked on me gets higher and higher and higher, as I do it. And so I think about all those things. And then all the, I carry ancillary equipment with me because I'm armed. So I've got med kits. I've got things like that. Well, I've used those things to help people that had nothing to do with being involved in the self-defense.
Right.
But because I'm prepared for that, I'm able to help somebody else for something else. And people, I think, forget all that there's more coming.
Or just don't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just something that your average person just doesn't consider.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I can remember clear back when my first session in the legislature, we started talking about, loosening up some of the concealed carry laws. And because our concealed carry laws were goofy for a long time. I mean, it defied common sense.
Yeah.
You could open carry, but the minute you pull a sweatshirt on, it's concealed carry, but you could put it in your purse and that's not concealed carry.
Yeah. That was right. That was before 1990. Right?
It was just, it was the dumbest set of conflicting garbage. And so when I remember Creighton Kearns, a great conservative legislator trying to point these things out. And I can remember, just like you said, we're going to have shootings in the street and there's going to be, bar shootings and blood everywhere. It hasn't happened anywhere that we've done this.
No. And what is it now? Is it up to like 26 states have constitutional carry?
I don't know what the number is now. I know Louisiana finally just went.
Oh, did they finally go?
Yeah.
Okay.
My buddy Jeff Landry, who's the governor now, who was the AG. Yeah. He signed that into law.
Oh, that's amazing.
And actually Blake Miguez, who is a lawyer, but also a former pro shooter.
Oh,
he's in the legislature down there, and he sponsored and brought that.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Because it was Seth Bergley, right? Who brought House Bill 102. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, who's a huge gun enthusiast.
Huge gun guy, good buddy of mine.
Owns a gun manufacturer.
Yeah,
does a great job. Yeah. So what's your vision? Like the next 4 years as the Attorney General, and I mean specifically to you. Like, what's the one thing? Because I know if you're like me, I've got lists and I'm checking boxes and making sure, okay, I got to get that accomplished. If you were pick the top thing you want to see that you have control over that you want to get done? And then how can we help you?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things there. I mean, I think it depends on I mean, like, again, public safety and drugs and crime and getting a handle on that. That has to be the number one. But like things that I'm looking at, like just inside, like as an administrator of a state agency, I want to put more focus on law enforcement.
Okay.
And probably the biggest thing that I want to put focus on is, like I mentioned earlier, is the law enforcement academy.
Yeah.
The academy, it's falling apart. A lot of those buildings are falling down. But I want to provide a better product to my consumers, who are the sheriff's offices, the local PDs, the tribal police. Like, and I think we do a good job, and we've updated curriculum, and it's no longer death by PowerPoint. Like, we're already getting reports that we are sending out a better new hire.
You are
for you guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But there's like, I'm horrified we don't have a shooting range.
Yeah.
We do. The state of Montana does not own a firearms range where we can train new law enforcement officers how to shoot.
And there's going to be some people in here that'll criticize me for this statement, and I don't care. It needs to be an indoor range.
I agree.
We have, now the heat you can, with water and little chalk on the hands, you can get through it. But as someone who's trained, I mean, I've been a fire instructor for over 25 years.
Yeah.
And as someone who's done all this for my career, they're not learning.
They're not taking it in.
Once that temperature drop below 50 degrees, they're not learning.
Yeah.
They are surviving, and they're just getting through the day, and they're not paying attention to anything you're saying.
Right.
And you need that environment.
Well, and here's what's even more horrifying. So the way it works right now, we have to rent an outdoor range that's owned by the city of Helena.
Yep.
It isn't that it's not a bad range. It isn't that it is a bad range. It's a decent range, but it's inadequate for what we need.
Right.
It's too small. We end up having to break the class into thirds.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what, so the way it would typically work is you're supposed to get 5 full days. Right. Now think about that. All your time in the academy, we're going to actually spend 5 days teaching you how to shoot. And we're seeing more and more first-time shooters who've never touched a gun.
It needs to be a month.
It does, and it needs to be off and on, right?
You need some apply adult learning.
Some classroom,
a couple hours.
Yeah, and then go to the range.
Yep.
And then walk away for a few days, and then come back. The way we do it now, we got to compress it all into a week. And then you had like what happened this last winter class, right? Because you might draw the short stick and get to come to the Montana Law Enforcement Academy and go shooting in winter.
Yeah, you don't get a choice in that either.
You don't get a choice. It's scheduled when it's scheduled. This last winter, they ended up getting 3 days of firearms because the weather was so bad. The targets wouldn't stay up. The ground was covered in ice. The cadets are freezing. The instructors are freezing. And it just wasn't conducive to teaching and learning. So we just had to pull the plug for 2 days. That means we sent out officers with 3 days of firearms training.
Right.
And we're handing them over to you.
Yeah.
Saying,
I mean,
like it's
any responsible agency is doing.
Sure.
I mean, I just had my newest guy who went to the academy. He had a full week of professional instruction before he went.
Right.
And then he's going to go, and then we'll probably give him another week when he gets back because it's the highest liability thing we do.
Sure.
But some agencies don't have that capacity. They just don't. You've got a sheriff, an undersheriff, and a deputy. And that deputy gets out of the academy, and the sheriff and the undersheriff have been working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That person, they're like, we need you on the road taking calls so I can see my family.
Right. Treasure County, Wheatland County, Golden Valley County.
Right.
I mean, they don't have that robust training program. So I mean, I want to provide a better product, and that's one where I'm just like, I'm literally embarrassed we don't have any kind of a shooting training facility.
What do you think like something like that's going to cost the state to get something like that?
I mean, we've sharpened our pencils a bunch of times. It depends on what you build. I mean, I agree with you. I think it has to be some sort of indoor.
Yeah.
We're looking at kind of a hybrid where maybe we can open up an overhead door and get some yardage and do some rifle shooting if we need to.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to go crazy. I think 50 yards is probably adequate, but maybe 100
for a basic understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
HVAC is always the problem with those shooting ranges. I mean, you have to do lead mitigation. Yeah, and that's what's expensive.
And then it's regulated by the EPA, so you have to do all that.
All those things, yeah. The good news is that we have the land out at the academy. Like there's space for it. We just need to get the appropriation. I mean, I'm gonna throw a number out, 10 million. Like I think we can do it cheaper than that, but I think that's probably a good safe a good safe number for what we would need?
You know, it's such a critical thing. I mean, people criticize use of force so much, but then the same people that criticize it won't put the money behind it.
Totally.
And you have to spend the money if you're going to. I mean, at the sheriff's office here, okay, if you get in an OIS, officer involved shooting, if you get involved in one of those, okay, you're going through DCI, usually investigating it. So it's it's a quasi criminal investigation. It's technically it's a use of force investigation.
Yeah.
But if you did something felonious, it's going to be found out and charged. So you've got that. Then we go through a shooting review board. Then we have a citizen use of force committee.
Yeah.
And the citizens review that and they watch it and they read all the reports and they make recommendations. And then finally they go through a coroner's inquest, which is kind of like the end of it.
It's a lot.
It's all this stuff. And then I keep trying to explain it to people, when, we have 87,000 rounds in our armory and we shoot a lot of it.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, that's super expensive. How come is the need for that? I'm like, okay, you do all these steps after. That tells me you should quadruple the steps before. No, I think that's a really good goal. And I think that, I think we have to be in law enforcement, which I think you appreciate because not only are you a law enforcement officer, but you're also an attorney. We have to get more proactive on the liability side.
For sure.
Shootings don't happen that often or pursuits don't happen that often. So let's not train that often. And it's the opposite.
Yeah. You have to prepare for the worst and you have to expect the worst. I mean, you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst always.
Absolutely.
It's like having a fire extinguisher around. You don't have it around because you want the fire, but you've trained and you know how to run it. And in case there is a fire, we can take care of it.
I have a tourniquet to stop blood loss.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't want my blood to fall out of my body.
Right.
But if I do, I have it.
Yeah. No, I think the academy has really been kind of neglected by the legislature. Now they've done, there's one newer building out there that's great, but I'm here to tell you, like, we had an old sewer line fail last winter out there. No one knew it was happening. And it's an old clay line. Like some of those buildings out there are over 100 years old. They're historic. And we didn't have the budget. Like that was a $50,000 fix and we didn't have the money for it. Like we had to go rob Peter to pay Paul and get that fixed so we can, keep the academy going and keep training people. And like, it's just, there's a lot of infrastructure issues out there that we need some attention.
Well, I think the rumor is we're supposed to have a surplus again at this next session. And so I hope we can work really hard and push for that because it just benefits the whole state.
Yeah. Well, and I've been working it. I mean, obviously that requires me to get legislators out there to see it.
Yep.
And that's difficult. I've found that a lot of legislators have never been out there, didn't know it was out there.
Right.
I've never had an interest in visiting. A lot of them still don't have an interest. Like, no, I don't want to go see that.
Right.
With the governor's office, with his budget staff, I mean, there's going to have to be some money spent out there, I think.
No, I agree. I very much agree. And you kind of understand this and know this because you're kind of a shooter yourself.
I dabble.
You dabble a little bit. Yeah.
I dabble.
So how long have you been into that?
My whole life. I mean, it's been my hobby and my passion since I was a little kid. My granddad was a gunsmith and was a reloader, and like he taught me stuff. Just fascinated me since I was a little kid.
Yeah, I like it's funny. You're a lot like me. We like a lot of the same guns, a lot of the same interests. I mean, I like all guns.
If it goes bang, I want to own it. I want to try it. Odds are I have tried it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, from a carry for law enforcement, I'm a Glock 9mm with an optic type of guy for practicality, but for the enjoyment aspect of it, I love revolver.
I'm a revolver guy.
Just love them, and you do too. And you've got some really cool ones.
I cut my teeth on revolvers like that. That's where I started.
Yeah.
I mean, on the ranch growing up, I don't even. I think the first semi-auto I was ever around when my dad finally bought a Beretta 92 FS.
Oh yeah,
probably after he watched Die Hard or Lethal Weapon or something.
Yeah.
That was the first semi-auto I was ever around. I mean, we were revolver people. I had a 22 revolver for shooting gophers, and if you were going to the mountains, you had a 44 Magnum or a 357. Like that's just That was my world really till I went to college.
Yeah, I really enjoy. It's funny. I actually really enjoy the Berettas, especially the new one, the Langdon ones.
Yeah.
Because they have the interface and feel of a revolver. They have the long double action trigger. You can the way the hammer falls. That's why I like revolvers. Is I had Steve Fisher from Sentinel Concepts on just a little while ago. And we were talking about it, and I'm like, it's like driving a car if you grew up driving a stick shift. When you're shooting a revolver, it's like you've got a really nice stick shift and it's super fun and you enjoy driving it because it's just fun to drive. You have to do a lot of things.
Well, and generally they're just a more precise firearm. I mean, they just, a Glock 9mm is great. I carry one every day, but you're not going to make a 100-yard shot on a 6-inch target with a Glock 9mm, most likely. Not saying it can't be done, but
yeah, for me, it's not even that. For me, it's kind of the nostalgia of it and the craftsmanship.
Right.
And it's like, you're running a Quartz Timex watch or you're running like a self-winding Rolex.
Yeah.
The revolver's kind of like the self-winding Rolex. Just, they're so cool. And I mean, I shoot them. I'm not just I don't lay them out on a table and a fanboy of looking at them. I shoot them.
Oh, yeah.
I shoot a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you reload?
Everything.
Did you? Everything. Really? Awesome.
Yeah. Except shotgun. I've never reloaded shotgun, but literally everything else. I rarely shoot any factory ammo in anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So do you have like go-to calibers of the stuff you shoot or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a 357 guy. Like if you were to give me what choice of one gun for the rest of my life, and this is a conversation I've had with Jerry Mitchell, like who's become a friend, like he agrees, like the 357 Magnum is probably God's perfect caliber for anything in the lower 48.
Right.
You can do a lot with a 357.
Well, and plus it's a great carbine cartridge.
Great. Yeah.
So it's just universal.
Yeah. 38 special. You can do a lot with good practice. So reload a lot of that. I'm a big 45 Colt guy.
Yeah. 45 Colt's cool.
Yeah. And if you've got a strong enough gun, you can do a lot with that 45 Colt.
Oh, absolutely. I've got an old Ruger 3-screw that's got the interchangeable cylinders. So I can shoot 45 long Colts. It's totally cool.
Yeah.
You go to SHOT Show quite a bit too, don't you?
I have been for over a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool as the Attorney General, though, you go.
Well, it's fun to go now as the Attorney General, and I get to be official, and I get to, we're actively recruiting companies, firearm companies, ammunition companies, I mean, whatever, like leave your red state and leave your blue state and come to Montana.
Right. Or leave your red state and come to Montana.
Well, there's that too. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we are not gonna discriminate.
Yeah.
Just come here and make guns.
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun because we've actually had some success. I mean, a couple of new ammunition companies, some ammunition component companies, which there's a huge demand for right now. I mean, the powder primer space, there's a huge deficit.
Oh,
the smokeless powder is becoming, and that deficit's going to keep getting worse.
Absolutely.
And we don't manufacture any in the U.S.,
which is crazy.
It is crazy.
It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Is that an EPA thing?
I think that's a big part of it. It's tough. Yeah, you're highly regulated in that space. You're dealing with chemicals. You're dealing with explosives. You're dealing with some lead derivatives. Sometimes mercury. Although they've gotten away from a lot of that stuff. But yeah, it's highly regulated, and I think that's just a function of our EPA.
Yeah, we got to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to move forward.
Yeah.
So, like maybe when you become the Attorney General of the United States,
don't wish that on me.
No, I wouldn't want that wished upon me either.
I hate DC.
That whole federal level stuff is terrifying.
No,
absolutely terrifying.
Pass.
Every time I see people go there, I'm like, are you sure?
I have to go there on occasion, and then just I lived there for briefly. In college, I interned, and I really disliked that town.
Yeah.
I don't like being there, and it's gotten worse the older I've gotten.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to get out of there when I'm there.
I find it's a really hard place to wrap your head around. I don't, and then if I were to understand it, I don't know if I want to. I don't want to see behind the curtain.
Yeah. And what you'd find behind the curtain is a bunch of 23-year-olds who are running everything.
Yeah.
That's what you'd really find. But I just find it oppressive. Like when I'm there, it's just like everything just feels oppressive. You're being weighted down. And I hate it. I got to get out of there.
No, I don't blame you. We are so blessed to live in this amazing state.
Yeah.
We're so absolutely best. And I really appreciate you coming on. I know you got a super busy day.
Yeah, no
Thanks
problem.
for taking your time.
Glad to do it.
I thought this was a really good podcast.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it.
It's fun.
Good luck to you. I know you're going to do great, and
You
appreciate
too. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Jesse Slaughter with the Pursuit Podcast. And we really appreciate the amazing support already that this channel has received. Our social media is blowing up. Everywhere we look, people are liking and clicking and commenting. But what we really need you to do is subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Spotify. That's what drives this channel. That's what's going to keep this channel going forever. Tim and Ben are behind the scenes doing tireless editing, working on this to make this come out the way it does, this high quality product that it is. So please go in there, click subscribe, click follow, and make sure that this channel sticks around for a long time, because we truly believe it's doing a lot of great things for our community. But there's many, many other people out there who we need to support. So follow and subscribe today. Thank you.